Damage spells are one of the best generic type of effect a spell card can have in any card game, arguably for its versatility for clearing boards or reducing your opponent's health immediately. The creators of Hearthstone know this too, as they usually print cards that deal 1 or 2 damage to any given character at a time. Fortunately, these spells can be boosted rather easily with cards that modify the damage output, though that brings up an interesting question. Just how much damage can you deal with a single spell? The best place to start is spell damage. As the name would imply, it has the ability to boost the damage output of spells played by the number listed next to it. Originally, spell damage was considered to be a very powerful effect for a minion to have, resulting in many minions with only spell damage 1. As time passed, cards started to increase their spell boost to spell damage 2 at the detriment of low stats, like Evolved Cobalt, costing 4 mana with just 2 health and 2 attack, forcing you to protect it if you couldn't use its effect immediately, or have high mana cost, like Darkmire Moonkin, costing 7 mana, severely limiting when and what you could do with it in a single turn, all except for one. Malygos, a 9 mana card with 4 attack and 12 health with the coveted spell damage 5, making weak spells like Arcane Explosion deal 1 damage to all minions even more powerful than Flame Strike, with its lesser deal 5 damage to all minions. You can easily fill up the board with copies of this card, with cards like Molten Reflection or Faceless Manipulator to summon exact copies to your side of the field, or add copies to your hand with cards like Echo of Medivh or Potion of Illusion, bringing the total spell damage up to 35 at any given point, since the max number of minions you can have on your side is 7. At this point, we should decide on what spell we should use. Although it is tempting to use a card like Pyroblast, deal 10 damage, you should really be using cards that target multiple minions, like Meteor, deal 15 damage to a minion and 3 damage to adjacent ones, as for every character affected by the area of effect spell will effectively multiply the damage dealt, dependent from the spell's innate power plus spell damage, multiplied by the number of characters hit. If you use the card Avalanche, for example, freeze 1 minion and deal 3 damage to adjacent ones. For example, if the spell is boosted by spell damage 5, then the card will deal 8 damage to 2 targets, 16 damage in total, compared to Lightning Bolt, deal 3 damage, under the same boost, dealing only 8 damage as it only targets 1 minion. Now, you may have an idea of what kind of spell we should use, but a clear winner comes from a very unlikely source. Cthulhu the Shattered is a generic legendary minion that shuffles 4 body parts into your deck at the start of the game. Body of Cthulhu, summon a 6/6 Cthulhu body with taunt. Maw of Cthulhu, destroy a minion. Eye of Cthulhu, deal 7 damage, split among all enemies. And most importantly, Heart of Cthulhu, with its incredible ability, deal 3 damage to all minions. 3 damage to each minion may not sound like much, but if you think about it like this, a spell like Flame Strike may deal 5 damage to every minion hit, which is a multiplier of 7. If we use the current 35 spell damage in this case, we would deal 280 damage, while Heart of Cthulhu deals 3 damage to all minions, including your own, essentially acting as a multiplier of 14, dealing 532 damage. At this point of time, there is no minion with spell damage 1000, however, we can get pretty close. With a card like Azurite Elemental, at the start of the turn, gains spell damage 2. To optimize this effect, you will want to play an Azurite Elemental on turn 5 and 6, and then play Potion of Illusion, and play only 1 more Azurite Elemental, then summon exact copies of it, with Faceless Manipulator and Molten Reflection on the first Azurite Elemental you played. Since you summon exact copies to the field, and will gain spell damage for all the turns prior, as if it was played on the exact same turn. Now, you just wait for the next 30 turns, as the next turn after this, you will die from fatigue. Fatigue being damage that increases every time you attempt to draw from an empty deck. At this point, you will have a collective spell damage 414. In total, you will deal 5,838 collective damage from a single spell. You could survive a little longer if you force a friend to keep summoning minions, so you could use the card Ignite to keep fatigue at bay a little bit longer. However, this will only help you last another 7 turns, as if both players' health are above 0 and 89 collective turns have passed, then by turn 90, both heroes will explode and the game will end in a tie. If you add the other 7 turns into the equation, then we will have a collective spell damage of 512 and deal 7,294 damage. If your friends have 7 minions on their side of the field, too. 7,294 spell damage is more than any player would normally see. But if you've seen how players can break this game, then you know we can do much better than this. The next strategy I would like to show you revolves around the legendary minion Mozaki, Master Duelist, with the ability, after you cast a spell, gain 1 spell damage. Since spell damage increases dependent on how many spells you can play, you will definitely want to have cards like Ignite deal 2 damage, shuffle another copy that deals 1 more damage into your deck, but unlike instantaneous draw effects like Arcane Intelligence, draw 2 cards. To really optimize Ignite's ability for infinite spells, you will need another minion. To have an infinite amount of spells at your disposal, Gadgetzon Auctioneer is the perfect card to use in this situation. With its ability, whenever you play a spell card, draw a card, meaning that every time you play Ignite and shuffle a copy into your deck, Gadgetzon Auctioneer will let you draw a card from your deck, allowing you to play an infinite amount of spells. So long as it's the only card in your deck, you can easily set this up with cheap spells using Gadgetzon's Auctioneer, or with the card like Cram Session, draw 1 card, improved by spell damage, and burn your entire deck. With Ignite costing 2 mana, you will be able to cast 5 Ignite spells every turn. However, an unexpected problem arises. If you draw a card after you shuffle a card into your deck, then you will always draw from an empty deck, since you draw twice in a row because of Gadgetzon's Auctioneer's ability, and die by turn 8 of fatigue damage. The only way around a fatigue would be to enlist Violet Illusionist. After summoning 7 Mozaki, assuming that you destroy Gadgetzon Auctioneer on turn 42, summon 2 Faceless Manipulators on turn 43, and Violet Illusionist on turn 44. After using 2 Molten Reflections, by turn 45, you would get 1,236 spell damage and deal 17,346 damage. This could be further improved by using the starting strategy by choosing to go second to gain the coin, which gives you 1 more mana to play with. So on turn 3 and 4, you play Sorceress Apprentice with the help of the coin. By turn 5, play Mozaki. With turn 6, play 2 Potions of Illusion, and then play 2 Mozaki. On turn 7, you will play Gadgetzon Auctioneer, and turn 8, summon Violet Illusionist. At this point, you will want to play as many spells as you can every turn, so it will be best to fill your deck with spells that cost 2 or less, as Sorceress Apprentice will reduce the cost of spells by 1 each. If you keep playing spells every turn at a rate of 12 spells a turn, accounting for animation buffering over the course of 36 turns, the cumulative count of these 3 alone will total 1,307 spell damage and deal 19,180 damage. The cumulative count could increase even further with the use of Faceless Manipulator and Molten Reflection on turn 42 after playing 10 other spells, and then kill the 2 Sorcerer's Apprentice. And then on turn 43, play 3 Ignites, the first on yourself since you take no damage, and then on to Violet Illusionist so that you can draw the 3rd Ignite to kill Gadgetzon Auctioneer to make room for the last Faceless Manipulator and Heart of Cthulhu on turn 44, since you are going second and only have 44 turns, and deal 45,962. Of course, with another 28 spell damage if you manage to save 2 mana biscuits for turn 43. 46,354. Impressive. And a little underwhelming. We're in the tens of thousands, but I thought we'd at least break into the triple digits. If you have a friend to help you, you could play cards like Ethereal Og Merchant or Felon's Chosen to give an extra 4 spell damage to your cards, or another 16 if your friend played 7 Jungle Moonkins that grant both players 2 spell damage for everyone on board. If you also include the 2 other Og Merchants, an extra 224 damage doesn't really seem to move the dial, but maybe we should stop trying to add to the total. Maybe we should start doubling. The card Moarg Artificer is the perfect solution to our problem, as its effect is all minions take double damage from spells, meaning that if your opponent has 7 copies of this minion on board, then that means our spells will gain an extra total multiplier of 128 damage. If we factor this into our equation, then Heart of Cthulhu deals in total 5,933,312 damage. And there you have it, 5,933,312 damage with a single spell. If there are any cards I should have used in this video, or any questions I should have answered instead, please tell me in the comments below.
I am the essence of magic!